So I had to give myself permission to be imperfect. Imperfect was something I shamed myself for. Being imperfect, needing help, not having the answer, not being the expert. Those are the things that I shamed in myself. And those are the things I had to learn to give permission to.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Okay, everybody. There's a moment in every transformation story where everything clicks, where years of struggle suddenly make sense and become the foundation for helping others. But for today's guest, that moment came courtesy of strangers first and his own shocking response that revealed just how deep his people-pleasing patterns ran. But here's the twist. Those same patterns that once paralyzed him became the answer to unlocking breakthrough transformations for leaders across multiple industries. On today's podcast, we're going to explore how experts transform their hardest won wisdom into world-changing impact. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer here at Authors on Mission, and today we're going to dive deep and chat with Aaron L. Hilton, talking all about his book. And Aaron, welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. I think it's going to be a really exciting conversation. You have some very insightful things to share with the audience today. But before we talk about your book, I always like to get to know you a little bit more. So I'm wondering if you'd, share a little bit about your past and, kind of what led you to writing the book. And I guess more importantly, what on earth was it like growing up with a quote tiger mom? I think that's
Absolutely.
very interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, that is my story. You mentioned my people pleasing, and that's really the culmination of my life has been learning how to be assertive in a way that isn't extreme. And I think that's the thing is everybody's looking for balance, right? Some people are too blunt and they want to find more nuance, et cetera, et cetera. But my story, I mean, I grew up homeschooled from kindergarten until college. And my mom, I mean, there's a lot of love in my family. My mom came from the Philippines and she would tell me, hey, the jocks and the sporty people were not the popular kids in the Philippines. It was the nerds and the scholastically gifted or those that worked really hard to get good grades, because they were the ones that would get out. And so my mom, being my homeschool teacher, she had a lot of be the best kind of mentality, which is very common already. And that phrase, tiger mom that you had mentioned, it for some people consider it like not entirely appropriate. I don't see any issues with it personally because it's not used in a stereotypical way. It is a phrase that is encapsulating the experience that I had. And which was, if you are unfamiliar, those listening, Tiger Mom is a phrase I believe picked up in the 80s, specifically describing Asian styles of parenting, which was very like get good grades, be better and better and better, and really pushing children towards scholastic achievement. Um, I believe if you kind of romanticize that, that's when you bleed into detrimental aspects. But for just talking about it, that was my experience, and that's capsulated in that phrase. But basically, my experience with it, there was no lack of love in my home. There was no harshness. There was no, you can't have a dinner until you finish this piano ballad. It wasn't that crazy. However, my grades growing up, we were graded on A, B, or F. That was it. That was our grading system. So anything less than 80% was considered a failure. And so, growing up from kindergarten to college with that sort of level, that standard, turned me into both a people pleaser and a perfectionist. And then, of course, add that on to homeschooling and just the social deficit in and of itself from the isolation. And my parents worked really hard to socialize me and my brother. We kind of operated in the same grade, we're almost raised like twins, and we're socialized in many different ways. Um, of course, we still grew up in a small town, small-ish town. And so there's only so many opportunities to connect with people when you don't really fit in. So I encountered a lot of that. And then the people pleasing kind of doubled down as I got older. I started to understand, oh man, there's something's not quite clicking. And part of that is just the journey of authenticity and being a leader, especially that's what I teach my clients now is how to be that. And it's isolating. When you want to be a trailblazer, well, you have to go where nobody's gone. And they say, well, why don't you walk that path? Because that's one that's well treaded. And you say, no, I'm going to cut my own. And then, of course, I got diagnosed officially with my autism in 2022, I believe it was. I think it was 23. I think it was 23. It's about 2 years now. Was it? I don't know, something like that. It's one of those things where it's like it feels longer than it was, but it was April 19th or 20th, a couple years back, basically. But that gave me permission, and there's where the word comes from my book is permission to kind of start being
Right.
myself. And there are a lot of books and media and shows and all this about when you get that permission as an individual that's autistic, there's a level of overcorrection as you start to lean more into your authentic self and then again finding that balance. So it was definitely a interesting
Yeah.
experience.
Well, first off, I actually never knew of that term before, which is why I kind of said that with a little bit of a chuckle, thinking, okay, wait, did you have a pet tiger? So I am sorry for
Uh,
that confusion.
oh, no, no, no.
I am sorry that I had to go through that too, but also it seems to have shaped the way that you are today. And at the end of the day, also helped you come up with the path to permission, the concept itself, and which helps so many other people who are in your shoes as well. But perhaps that's a good segue for us to talk a little bit about permission because, that's the main core of this all. So, what does giving yourself permission really mean? Why is it so difficult for people to do? What do you think?
So there's many different ways to talk about what it means to be gifted permission. And part of it, you can speak from an individual point, a cultural point, an upbringing point, nature versus nurture, and then also societal, environmentally. So there's so many factors in how do we become the person we want to become. And of course, we say authenticity whenever I talk about authenticity, and I'll talk about that first, then speak to permission. And let me just create that context. Sometimes when I speak on the concept of authenticity, because that is what I lead people towards in my coaching and create cultures around in my business, when we talk about that, I say, a thief is authentic, right? Like if I come up to you and say, I'm going to steal your purse and I steal your purse, you can hate that, of course. You can say, hey, that's not allowed. It's against the law, et cetera, et cetera. But I did what I said. If I am a thief at my core, then I am authentic in saying, hey, I'm a thief. Right. And so a lot of times we shy away from certain parts of ourselves and we don't give ourselves permission because we're afraid of our own authenticity. And that's kind of what happens is we sit and we say, well, I'm scared of being seen as something different because I'm this. But if you're gonna do an Ocean's 11, right, and you go on a whole heist, you're gonna want a thief, right? And now, of course, I'm not gonna sit here and say, hey, you should befriend your local thief, right? But we need to understand that permission sometimes means I need permission to cry. I need permission to be flawed. I need permission to be this thing that I see myself a shame in myself. Like, for instance, mine was imperfection because anything less than 80% was flawed, right? 80% and higher is pretty good, right? But I didn't get 100% in school. I got 105%. I would find the bonus question. And my mom always loved giving us a fun little bonus question. And so we'd always have like over 100%. And that gave me a sense of understanding where perfection was baseline. Like 100% is the baseline I should meet. I should always exceed that. That's what's actually expected. So I had to give myself permission to be imperfect. Imperfect was something I shamed myself for, being imperfect, needing help, not having the answer, not being the expert. Those are the things that I shamed in myself. And those are the things I had to learn to give permission to. It's referred to in therapy and mental health work as shadow work. It's the acceptance of pieces of yourself that you might not want to accept, such as, for those who can't see video, I don't remember if this is audio only, but I have a darker complexion. I'm a male presenting person and I have a beard, darker complexion. I'm muscular. So sometimes I'm a big kid, right? And so I need to be wary of, hey, I'm a big, like 5'10" and a half muscular guy running towards a friend of mine across a crowd, some people might be scared of what's essentially a bulldozer running through a crowd, right? And so you say, "Oh, sorry, excuse me, I need to go through," right? We kind of shift pieces of ourselves. But anyway, that's going down a little bit of a tangent, but
Well, I wouldn't say it's quite a tangent because it does kind of really exactly into more concepts of your book. Like you mentioned, embracing discomfort as something that's essential for us to do, which is something that, directly relates to what you're just talking about. And that's also something that you embrace in your book, the idea of being discomfort avoidant.
mhm.
I wonder if you'd like to speak a little bit about that because it's something that I think is definitely important these days.
Absolutely. I did not speak to this specifically in the book, but it's a concept I may in like future versions or something talk about is we kind of as a society and as humanity have kind of evolved in a way that's detrimental to creating resilience. And so when it comes to discomfort, part of growth and part of breakthroughs come from specifically entering into uncomfortable situations. So for instance, I just talked about, I want to go be a big kid and just yell at my friend across the room, say, "Hey," and then run over and give him a big hug, right? Well, if there's a crowded room and there's a lot of people and maybe, they seem like the shy type or I'm at some IT convention or something, right? Let's just paint a
Right.
picture. And so I'm like, I don't want to be this big extroverted force. Why? And then I'll explore and I'll say shame. There's a shame there of, oh, you don't want to be loud. You don't want to be obnoxious. You don't want to disrupt these people's day because there's the people pleasing, right? And so in order to grow from that, part of my work that I still do currently is affirmations and self-talk and sitting with myself and saying, okay, I feel ashamed of taking space, but I'm so passionate for my friend. So I'm weighing the discomfort that I would hold in taking space. Like I am allowed to take some space. And my friend, they would probably appreciate seeing me beaming with energy. And if somebody next to them on the way, like a stranger, doesn't like it, well, that sucks for them, right? And so taking that sort of, hey, I'm going to do what I want in a way that's harming nobody. And if you don't like that, well, that's on you. Kind of not accepting that emotional burden for other people. That's what people pleasing is I'm going to take the emotion you have and I'm going to hold on to it when you don't need to, you know?
Understood. No, that's a really good explanation for it. And yeah, I mean, it is really important. And you're right that we have to like not make room for other people, but embrace ourselves. That avoiding people pleasing is all about. Um, so a little bit more about your book and that in total. I guess I never quite asked what led you to wanting to write this all down. It's something that you've been living and learning about your whole life, but why put it into the written word? Was there a specific catalyst?
Part of it is just that I wanted to create something. I felt called to create just the sense of the word that comes to mind is neutrality, but that's not entirely correct. It's more of a connectedness that I wanted to create. Basically, in my book, I talk about the catalyst essentially was I was sitting on this for a while, kind of thinking of the idea of permission, etc. And it just kind of clicked for me. And I tell the story in my book, but I love all sorts of forms of expression. I've done Muay Thai and 4 different types of martial arts. Well, I wanted to go learn the SCA, like LARPing and like the Renaissance Fair night fighting, like
Right. Yeah, I've
the
heard of
icons.
that.
Yeah, and so a person was training me to use the great sword, and we were talking. He said, "What have you done before?" And he basically says, "I always meet somebody in the framework they've already had," and that just hit me. And basically, he taught me the footwork of swordsmanship being very similar to boxing, which is similar to Muay Thai. And so that kind of had me spark an understanding of, you could be highly religious, you could be atheist, you could be into witchcraft, or you could be into Hinduism or Eastern religion, Western religion, stars, astrology, whatever it is. Everything's kind of the same framework. And that's what I really wanted to expand into a book. And my book is pretty short. It's 62 pages, 64 pages, something like that. And it's about 10,000 words. It's meant to be a quick, immediately actionable concept where it just states 4 or 5 different steps of here's how you can kind of look into creating a breakthrough. And it comes through your own framework. It's understanding your own framework. And that's part of where I mentioned earlier a lack of resilience, which is if you are saying, hey, I want to start a business or start a podcast or whatever it is, and so probably in your journey starting a podcast, you went and saw other people, what are they doing? Right. And so then you'll get all these data points, but then you still have to do it your way. And that's what it is. It's finding out how to do it your way. And that's through your framework. And so you have a unique framework that's slightly different. Authors on a mission. Okay. So you're highlighting authors that have specific passions and missions and a sense of gravitas to their work versus, oh, let's do a book review. Neither of those are better or worse than the other. It's just different. It's more authentic to you and your journey. And so those that listen, think about what are the things that call to you. If I am a gym person or I'm a sports person or I'm a gardener, all of those are tools to create metaphors that really resonate with me and the crowd. That if there's another person at the gym and we are talking about personal growth, we'll say, hey man, it's kind of like hitting the set on the bench press. You got to up the weight every now and then. Okay, that's developing discomfort to create resilience for your body. Now do that for your goals and your personality in the way that you want to move towards authenticity. And as you do that, you're going to get more emotional and personality resistance from others around you. And that's what it means to be resilient enough to be a leader, which is what I teach. Is I teach people to become leaders. And so that's kind of that process.
Well, that's very inspiring to think about. I mean, you're right. When you think about it and you kind of zoom out a little bit, any concept can be related to any concept. So, say you don't have anything in common with somebody, you don't understand somebody, it's silly because when what you just explained, everything comes from the same baseline at one point. So, yeah, very inspiring to think about. So, taking all this, and I'm imagining you sitting there about to write your book. What was that process like for you? I'm wondering, perhaps was there any challenges? Was it difficult to balance your personal experiences with more practical frameworks? Shine a little light on that for us.
Absolutely. So I've always loved to write outside of frameworks. I've always had struggle writing within parameters, which is funny because every other aspect of my life, I say, what are the parameters? Give me a sandbox and I'll play, right? And I'll make magic. And so when I was writing this book, I really just wanted to think, what do I want to say? And I wrote probably, I think it's about 5 major sections, and I wrote probably 10 of them, and really just messed around with what links to what kind of actually operates. And I made half of a whole other book about that probably will never see the light of day because it's one of those books, right? You get
Okay.
your ideas down. Um, but I was talking about growth in humanity through the lens of like I wanted to make more of a child's book. And so I kind of just got pieces of my journal and my story and just wanted to create whimsical, childish sort of stories. Well, those kind of helped me say, what are the life lessons out of these? And then I went and took those and talked about what is the journey of permission and what is the journey of these frameworks and how do I really help, how do I individually help somebody through growth? So it was more about my coaching style, basically. And it was more of my life philosophy, which is if I'm seeking to connect with somebody, if I'm seeking to understand somebody, let me find the framework that they see the world through. And I've said to people, I have spreadsheet brain. The people that get it. The people that don't. And so those that don't get it, I say, whenever you give me a single data point, it's like you're filling in an autocorrect on a spreadsheet. You put in 3 or 4 data points, and then suddenly the whole thing fills up. And then you give me a fifth data point and then a sixth. And so it refines, and I'm remaking that whole spreadsheet with projective data. And I tell people that, and the people that get it are usually IT individuals or overthinkers that say, yes, you gave me 2 or 3 pieces of information. And I immediately thought, 10 years down the line, what's the 10-year plan? And then you said, actually, we're going to do this. Okay, now I remade that 10-year plan. And it happens so naturally. So that was one of the aspects of, okay, if I can't speak spreadsheet brain with this person, what do they want to speak? And I found that through my coaching is how to connect with people is that common ground. Find that common ground. And so how can I then lead them into a breakthrough if I don't see the world through their lens and I can't resonate with what they're seeing? If I just say, hey, you have to do it my way, I wouldn't be a very good coach at all because emotional flexibility and that ability to see different perspectives is core to my coaching work and also to the transformation of businesses towards, a more holistic, heart focused environment. So I needed to. But going back to the original question, that writing process, honestly, I sit down and I just write. And I know that sounds so basic of an answer for somebody as overthinking and analytical as but I really just sat and wrote all the things that resonated. And I said that would probably be a section. And I refined from there, thinking, okay, this is kind of what I want to talk about, and we'll see what connects with what. And then I had sections where I flipped which one was where. And so sometimes it was just what are the chunks that I have to work with? What are the sections? And what does it kind of look like pieced together? And what is the flow?
Understood. Right. So I'm glad that you kind of just stayed outside of the box and follow that framework. You did what works for you. You need to find, whatever is going to get those ideas out on the paper in the best way possible. Maybe it's following a structure, maybe it's not, maybe it's just listening to your heart. But that's a great tip for anybody who's trying to get the same ideas out there or in a similar fashion. So great stuff there. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
um, so I'm wondering, first up, do you happen to have a copy of the book with you today?
I do. Yeah. I'll hold that up right here for you.
Yeah, I always like to give a time to spotlight on. So there is The Path to Permission. I love the design. Did you have anything to do with the cover art?
So yes, I will admit I used the Dolly, the newer kind of AI generation. However, I filtered it through a individual on that I commissioned to kind of filter this and change it up. And I gave them the basic that I had created, which I had the idea of, all right, let's make it a sunset. Let's make it a sunset slash sunrise, something where you're walking a path towards. And for some people, it's a setting sun. For some people, it's a rising sun. So I really wanted it to be that specific frame of, is this dawn or is this a dusk? And so you see, as I'll pull it back up once again, you see that there's this kind of darkness to it. And a lot of people read this as, okay, it's essentially going to be a self-help book. It's maybe even a spirituality book slightly. Those are kind of the crowd that really enjoys this. And again, it's about my personal coaching style. But I personally resonate with more of a darker cover, because if you are looking and scrolling for self-help books and you see the one that's all stormy night, right? Like so many self-help books are minimalist and bright and happy, like, oh, you're going to figure your life out. And I say, no, you're not going to figure your life out. Simple as that.
Right.
But my book is, it is a challenge, because really what I do with coaching is I'm not giving you a solution, I'm giving you a direction. And
Mm.
the way you create those solutions comes from you and I's collaboration. And so when I introduce people to my book and they see that framework and they say, okay, this is work. I say, I believe it was, I have the book right here. The man who did Positive Intelligence, Shirzad actually would say coaching is like personal training for the heart. And so if you use that example, if I come to the gym, a lot of people understand what a gym's for. A lot of people don't understand what executive coaching is for, or business coaching, or life coaching, whatever really you want to call it. It's just me being there, cheerleading you on a journey. You still have to go to the gym. If you wanted to come see me every single day as your emotional personal trainer, sure, but that would get really expensive, right? But what we can do is we can stand here together and I say, how's the last week been? What's helped, what has hurt? And some people don't want therapy because a lot of therapy looks backwards. Coaching focuses on the forward, focuses on what's our next step, what's our next goal. And a lot of people like that forward motion. And of course, that's a general statement. A lot of therapists look forward. My therapist is really good at what's our action plan, etc. So, if you're a person that likes therapy and is in it, please don't like abandon therapy for coaching. They're two sides of a similar coin. But legally, I'm not a therapist. I'm outside of HIPAA. So coming all the way back to talking about the book, I really just wanted people to understand that it's a journey and it's difficult and it's their responsibility. But I wanted people to feel invited towards invited towards the darkness, almost, of like, okay, this is going to be tough, but I'm really curious about what's on the other side. Those are the people that I want to work with. Those are the people that I want to help grow, because those who are saying, okay, it looks like it's dusk, I don't really want to go there, I don't know how it's going to be, and really anxious and spiraling, well, they probably need therapy, not coaching, because we need to build resilience in order to say, all right, let's start looking in this direction, basically.
Understood, right? And so I love how that cover then is kind of the absolute symbolism for what you're doing. It's, the darkness, but it's a different approach. It's unique. It's what helps your audience and your clients both kind of see a different path. But you did talk a lot about the coaching. So I'm wondering if people were interested in, seeking your guidance, joining your coaching system, what's the best place for them to reach out and get in touch?
Absolutely. For me, it would be on LinkedIn. You can find me, Aaron Helton, and I'm assuming we'll have some links in the description here below of this episode. But otherwise, really just connect with me on LinkedIn, talk with me, and we'll talk about kind of where you're at in your journey. And I pride myself on being a super connector. So if there's something that I can't do to help you, I know people that can help in those ways. If it's, oh, well, it turns out it's a financial issue. Well, I'm not a financial consultant, but I know people that might be able to help you get sorted. And then when you save, however much and you're looking for coaching, you can come back to me, right? But for people that are struggling and just want somebody to talk to, really, I mean, that's what I do. And, I do it in a professional fashion for businesses, specifically like what's our next goal? How do we move with intention? What factors are at play? So I really focus on creating that culture in businesses. But if you individually are looking for life coaching or just somebody to really focus on what are the paths that I can take, what are the parameters that I have, and what is my ability and my resilience. And then I will say, all right, here's the permission, go do it, go achieve your goals. Because just having somebody in your corner in and of itself is powerful.
Right, absolutely. So I love that. And you are right. We're going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today. But you're very inspiring. And I think anybody listening today they're going to be hungry for more. So it's great that we're going to have that resource for them. And speaking of more, I have a feeling that this book is not the last one. I'm wondering if you happen to have any other projects on your mind right now, anything else that you're working on that we could be excited for in the future.
Probably in the future. I'm in a interesting life path or life stage right now in the winter time of really looking at different aspects of my reality as of right now. And so I haven't been focused on a creative space for writing books. However, this is also a stage that gives me a lot of growth and a lot of stories. And so, turmoil, I always welcome it because it leads to stories. But as far as things in the future, I mean, I definitely want to look at a business book of sorts, something really focusing on cultural transformation and or potentially a narrative on, again, building resilience potentially in the workforce in the sense of emotional resilience. I won't get too in depth about it, but you think of overcorrection in the sense of, hey, there's a really, really blunt person that then wants to be kinder and learn nuance. Well, then they swing into people pleasing, or vice versa. You're a people pleaser, you want to be more assertive, you swing into being way too blunt and way too forceful. You need to learn the nuance of the other side. And that takes capacity and that takes resilience of your emotional state of, okay, what is my center? People keep talking about come back to center. So I'm thinking of a book like that. And then also as I do this work, I'll gather stories of clients and individuals. So I was thinking of, specific books for specific industries or even just stories, maybe an anthology of sorts. But yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. I guess we can, stay up to date by connecting with you on LinkedIn to see when those might be in the works. Some really awesome stuff for us to look forward to. And thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I think that it's been a huge inspiration. You have offered many different tips for not only writing, but also for transforming our mindsets and the way we interact with others. So amazing stuff. So there's tons of listeners who are right now thinking, I see myself in Aaron's story. What's the first step you would tell them today to start their own path to permission? Or perhaps any final thoughts that they should be thinking about now that they've heard all of this? What would you say to them?
I would say first off, dream. Start
Okay.
dreaming. A lot of times, especially in today's world, there's so much just difficulty and conflict and turmoil and things that are distracting. There's so many distractions in the world, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. There's so many distractions of what's the right path. And so the only way to find yours is to sit with yourself and think, what do I want? And so I will give you permission to be selfish and sit and meditate or think or whatever gets you into a mind space that is introspective, or even asking your friends, what is it that's, you always see as like a core piece of me or something like that. Get data as for who you like being, and that can become your baseline. If you need help doing that, or you'd like a person in your corner, come work with me. Send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll give you a free hour of coaching. And by the end of that, my mission in life is to give everybody the opportunity to feel seen, heard, and empowered. So after 1 hour with me, if you felt even just from these 30 minutes that we've had, if you have felt empowered or seen or heard in any way, shape, or form, know that an hour, and I can look and meet you where you're at, is going to help you have leaps and bounds towards the person you want to be.
That's incredible and so generous of you to offer an hour for free. You could let everybody go ahead and just get in touch with her, and an hour can solve so much and offer amazing insights. So that's really, really great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, guys, I mean, there you have it. Some beautifully inspiring words. And if you want to dive deeper into Erin's framework, then, well, just grab a copy of The Path to Permission for yourself. And again, we have the links in the description box of this podcast today. So you can click on those, connect with Erin directly on LinkedIn. And if you're ready for that connection call, or, just don't wait. Sometimes the permission we need is the permission that we need to ask for help, right? So there you go. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really been quite a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Danielle.
Of course. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. And just remember that your expertise matters, your story has power, and the world needs what you have to offer. So until next time, keep writing your mission.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or a leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.